people, and sometimes it does kill energy.
It is very exhausting. Were you at Token 24/9? You were, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
so exhausted.
Yeah. It's like the whole week kind of mood.
Yeah.
So welcome
should we get started,
everyone.
or okay?
I'm just gonna say hi to everyone first. We're just gonna give it maybe another 5 minutes. So I think everyone just starting to join in. It's kind of almost at the end of dinner time in Vietnam, so and in Asia and Southeast Asia as well. So I think more people will be tuning in from here. Thank you everyone for making your time. Happy belated Halloween and happy Diwali, if anyone is celebrating that.
Is Halloween a big thing in Vietnam?
It's becoming bigger. It's becoming bigger.
It is?
Yeah. We just need to find an excuse to socialize. That's all.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So we're gonna have special guests from Arbitrum Foundation today. So Clifton here. I'm gonna have from Sotatech, who's gonna co-host this session with me. And thank you for tuning in this session. So this session is co-hosted by APAC DAO and ABC Station. So we focus on education and events and hackathons, as well as supports for developers in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. So thank you all for tuning in, and make sure that you can follow us on Twitter and on our Discord so that you can stay up to date with our upcoming AMAs as well. So today we're gonna have very interesting updates and sharing from our guests regarding Arbitrum, the latest updates, with the ecosystem as well as with the DAO. So make sure that you have your questions ready, and you can type in this chat or on Discord, and our team would make sure to collect all of those questions and share back with Clifton. And we're hoping to have more sessions after this as well for all of the enthusiasts of Arbitrum. So please stay tuned. And yeah, I think maybe we can start by having a brief introduction from Clifton. Who are you? What are you doing? What makes you so excited about Arbitrum, maybe, and what you are planning to share with us today?
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on the call, and feel very excited to go into the sharing later. So, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Clifton. I'm the DAO Relations Lead over at the Arbitrum Foundation. So what I essentially do right now is I engage a lot with the different projects and the different delegates that are participating and building on top of Arbitrum, just understanding what's top of mind for them, understanding how we can enable them to, build better or, be a little bit more present in the DAO and contribute to the wider ecosystem. So it's just a lot of different conversations, just doing a lot of introductions between the different teams, just so that they can find synergies, getting the delegates to chat with each other, just so that everyone knows what each other is kind of thinking about. And ultimately, we just want to make sure that building on Arbitrum is easy, it's inclusive. So that's kind of like our mission over at the foundation. We are a neutral steward of the Arbitrum DAO. And we don't kind of like, sway decision making. We don't post proposals, we don't vote, but at the same time, we want to make sure that building on Arbitrum is easy and governing the Arbitrum DAO is easy. So that's a little bit about me. Prior to joining the Arbitrum team, I was actually with UIDX. So if anyone else has questions around like DEXs, specifically perp DEXs, feel free to kind of like leave some questions here as well. UIDX just launched like a new Cosmos chain. So that's really exciting. But yeah, I think for Arbitrum specifically, where I'm a little bit more focused on right now, what we're excited about are a couple of things, right? So one, it's just how decentralized the community is. I think we have a very different culture as compared to like other DAOs and other ecosystems where, if you actually take a look at our governance forums, if you actually take a look at the different discussions that are being held, none of them are actually kind of like core team driven, right? So just for context, like Off-Chain Labs is actually the company that built out the Arbitrum protocol. They built out Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova. And then since the airdrop earlier this year in April, they handed over the control and the governance of both chains over to the DAO. And since then, everyone has been, when I say everyone, I mean like different projects, different delegates have actually been, spearheading many different initiatives without much involvement from the foundation or from off-chain labs itself. And I think that is a very sustainable way to really, grow the ecosystem in a way, they can essentially progress even without the involvement of the core team. That's what I'm very, very excited to build out, to continue to build out. And then on the technical development side of things, I think we have, Stylus, which is in testnet right now. Stylus essentially allows people to, or rather builders and developers to deploy smart contracts using Rust, C, and C++ on top of Solidity, right? So it's a compiler which compiles to Wasm. So it significantly opens up the realm of developers that can actually build on top of Arbitrum. I'm very, very excited on that. It's in testnet right now again, so feel free to kind of like check out the developer docs and play around and see what apps you can build up using Stylus. We also have this thing called Bold. Bold, B-O-L-D, is essentially a new permissionless protocol that allows for permissionless validation of the Arbitrum chains. So right now the validators are actually a permission set, right? We only have 13, but what Bold allows is for this to be permissionless, right? And what that essentially means is that anyone can run the validator node and anyone can issue a fraud proof whenever they see something wrong with the chain. And what's cool about it is that only one honest validator has to be present in order for this fraud proof to be raised and corrected. So there can't be kind of like whale attacks or whatnot. As long as one is kind of honest, then the fraud proof will still be issued, and then the chain can kind of correct itself to its canonical and correct state. I'm not technical enough to explain exactly how that works, so feel free to kind of like look into the developer docs to pursue that, to dig deeper. And then I think lastly, something that's a little bit new is, the team at Off-Chain Labs is actually exploring and researching how to decentralize the sequencer. So right now, there is only one sequencer for both chains, but to achieve full decentralization, you gotta kind of decentralize that aspect of the chain as well. So they have partnered up with Espresso Systems to kind of explore how the sequencer can be decentralized, whether it's through DVT, distributed validator tech, or some of the other techs. So keep an eye out for that. So those are kind of like the main things that I'm excited about. Yeah, sorry, that was a long spiel.
No worries. I think you will have more time later to show everyone what you are exactly excited about, in terms of the Arbitrum recent development. So before going into that, just want to say, just want to shout out as well to Infok and Sota Tech team as well for co-hosting this session with us. I think a lot of you have seen Infok around. So later we will have the AMA between Infok and the community, and as well as Clifton. So I think now we can go straight into the presentation as well, Clifton. So the stage is yours, and feel free to let us know in details what you're excited about Arbitrum.
Okay, cool. Thanks for handing it over. So I'm gonna go into this presentation right now. Bear with me if it gets boring. So essentially, I think all of you guys are familiar with the blockchain trilemma, right? Like we have scalability, we have security, and then we have decentralization. So Ethereum as a base layer, they chose to prioritize decentralization as well as security. So where does that leave like scalability and throughput? That's where layer 2s come in, and that's where Arbitrum really serves to expand and push out Ethereum to more builders to make it more usable, right? So we have a suite of scaling solutions. We are a layer 2 optimistic rollup, 2 chains that are on mainnet right now. So we have Arbitrum 1, Arbitrum Nova. Arbitrum Orbit is just launched as well. It essentially allows you to deploy your own L3 chain. So this is an L3 that settles on top of either Arbitrum 1 or Arbitrum Nova. These 2 are L2s. Right, and then Stylus is what I was talking about, where essentially you can use Rust, C, and C++ to deploy smart contracts. It compiles to Wasm, and it's compatible with all Solidity launched smart contracts as well. So ultimately, layer 2s allow for low-cost transactions. It's fully trustless just because it settles on Ethereum, and it's drop-in compatible, meaning to say it's fully EVM compatible. You can port your apps from mainnet over to either Arbitrum 1 or Nova with one-click porting, and it works with existing Ethereum languages and toolings. So what powers Arbitrum 1 and Nova? It's this technology called Nitro. So these are essentially the key ways in which Nitro is an improvement over the previous iteration of the Arbitrum protocol, right? So this is a major upgrade. It allows for advanced call data compression, separate context, which means that executing and fork proving is actually separate. It allows for Ethereum L1 gas compatibility, additional L1 interoperability, safe retrievals, and gas tracing. So yeah, feel free to kind of dive into the developer docs to understand a little bit more about what Nitro powers. And then just to go through the chains individually. So Arbitrum 1 is the main chain, or the chain that everyone's kind of like familiar with. It's launched, I believe, in 2021 or 2022, right? It's battle tested. We have a suite of about 1,000 plus applications that deployed on top of Arbitrum 1. From a data availability standpoint, all the call data is posted to Ethereum, so it's a true rollup in that sense. There is L1 to L2 native bridging, and bridging actually, the bridging contract actually self-enforces validity of transactions on Arbitrum 1, meaning to say that there are no like multi-sigs involved in this bridge. So it's totally trustless. Security mechanism, so we actually have fraud proofs that can correct for malicious behaviors. And in any case, like Ethereum as a base layer kind of guarantees security. Anyone can kind of challenge and issue a fraud proof from the L1 and then withdraw funds from the L1 as well. And when a 51% attack occurs, we can actually withstand a 99% attack on validators, just because we only need one honest validator to issue fraud proof and correct the state of the chain. So just some key metrics. We have roughly $5.5 billion locked. This presentation was prepared about a month ago, so I believe now it's a little bit higher. If you check L2B, you can get a better sense. We have roughly 55% of layer 2 market share. That's it. We are not resting on our laurels. We need to continuously improve, because everyone's really trying to attract more builders to the space, trying to attract more users. So we are just the same, just trying to roll out more incentives, more easy ways for people to build on top of Arbitrum. We have roughly 2,000 plus integrations with different decentralized applications, and we have 13 million plus unique addresses that are using Arbitrum 1. These are our metrics, currently averaging roughly 600,000 weekly transactions. Unique addresses, we have roughly 13 million. And then this is something that's relatively new. So this is what we call Anytrust, and it's a variant of Nitro, which I was talking about earlier. So Anytrust is different from Nitro in the sense that it's not exactly a rollup, in the sense that it doesn't post the batches from the transactions to Ethereum directly. Rather, the data is actually posted to a data availability committee, a DAC, right? And then the DAC would actually be posting a certificate to L1 Ethereum. So in a sense, it's a little bit more compressed. You are trusting the DAC. So Arbitrum Anytrust essentially introduces a trust assumption. But what we get in exchange for that trust is that we have significantly lower fees. So I think fees are roughly 10% of what Arbitrum 1 is. So say, for example, a standard transaction today on Arbitrum 1 will cost you $1. On Nova, it will cost you probably 10 cents. This was widely used by Reddit when they actually launched, when they actually integrated Arbitrum 1 into 2 of their subreddit spaces. To onboard, I think 266 different addresses, they only spent like $1,500, when if they use Arbitrum 1, they would have spent at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if it's mainnet, it's in like maybe even the millions. So yeah, ultimately, data availability is kind of managed by a community. And then this is something that the DAO has control over at the moment. So if you're a member of the DAO, you can put in a proposal to either remove or change up the makeup of this data availability community. Sorry, it's a bunch to say. Ultimately, it's trust minimized by design. It settles securely on Ethereum after all. It's just that there is that middle step of having data settled on a certificate. A DAC would actually post that data directly to Ethereum, and we only require two honest parties of the community to actually verify that that certificate is true. So what we are really targeting for Nova is high throughput applications like games, like NFT projects. So game developers, social networks would be more suitable for Arbitrum Nova. When it comes to like DeFi apps, sure, they can kind of pursue this, but you just gotta be able to kind of like live with the trade-offs. And then this is kind of like our makeup of the data availability community today. It's a mix and mash of Web2, established Web2 and Web3 providers, right? So on the Web2 side, you can see that we have guys like Google Cloud, actually there are a few others that aren't mentioned here. Reddit is one of them as well. And then on Web3 side, we have Consensus, QuickNote, Off-Chain Labs, OpenSea, and O2O Validator. Right, so Nova is relatively newer, so the weekly transaction count is slightly lower. Number of unique addresses is at 1.93 million only as well, but we do see a lot of new gaming applications, gaming studios, publishers actually trying out Nova, so we do expect these numbers to go up significantly. Last on Orbit, so Orbits are essentially a way to deploy your own application chain as an L3, right? So you can do this permissionlessly, right? So again, Orbit chains are L3s that settle on top of Arbitrum 1 or Nova, or if you're on testnet, then Arbitrum Goalie, and then subsequently that layer 2 that it settles on will then post the call data over to L1. So it's just another layer in the entire stack upstream, right? Why would people want to use Orbit chains? Because this actually opens up full suite of customization options, right? You can actually enable permission access. You can actually significantly increase your performance by customizing and increasing the gas reliability through dedicated throughput. You can introduce your new token. You can use that token as the custom fee instead of using ETH, and then ultimately it's still EVM compatible, right? You can actually program it in such a way that you have reliable gas prices and it's not dependent on other projects that are using the layer 2, right? So you can customize protocol logic. There are low upfront setup costs just because we already have all the code public. So literally you just have to change some parameters here and there, and you can deploy your own L3 chains right away. It's a little bit more complex though. So I would say that this is something that isn't for everyone. You need to think about who your RPC providers are. You need to think about bridging options, block explorers, exchanges, bridges, fiat on-ramps, and so on and so forth. So yeah, these are essentially the three quote-unquote chains or solutions that builders can leverage right now. What's next, and what I'm personally very excited about is Arbitrum Stylus, right? So Stylus allows for Rust, C, and C++ to code Web3 applications and deploy contracts directly to work on Ethereum, right? So in a way, we open up the realm of developers that can essentially build on top of Arbitrum. It is EVM plus, not EVM not EVM equivalent, but EVM plus, which is better because you can essentially get the benefits of popular programming languages like Rust, C, and C++ without changing how the EVM works. There are use cases where we wouldn't be able to do right now in EVM in Solidity that are possible in Stylus. And it's fully interoperable with existing Solidity contracts. So Solidity contracts can actually call a Rust contract or rely on dependencies in another language. So you literally can build your own application in these three languages and be sure that they can interact with existing DeFi apps out there or NFT platforms out there, right? So this is EVM essentially. This is EVM plus, right? So there is this new WASM VM, which is essentially the heart of Stylus. So essentially what it does is that instead of compiling and going through the EVM bytecode path, the contracts are actually compiling on WASM, and then Nitro is actually going to be supporting this WASM VM along with the EVM, and that would allow smart contracts to be deployed that way. Yeah, so this is a lot to see, but this is kind of like a snapshot of all the, not all, but some of the applications on the DeFi front that are live on Arbitrum One and Arbitrum Nova. So I think like some of the more prominent ones that you guys would have heard about are things like GMX, for example, or Radiant Capital, or DApps or Gains Network, right? So those are kind of like the early ones. We also have like popular mainnet applications like Uniswap, like Balancer, that are also available in Arbitrum Aave as well, right? And then this is a snapshot of the gaming ecosystem. So it's a little bit smaller, but we do anticipate significant growth with this, especially with Nova ramping up. Stylus in itself is also going to enable a lot of developers to build gaming applications, just because C++ is a Unity language. So we do expect a lot of gaming applications to be deployed on Arbitrum by virtue of Stylus. And then we also have a vibrant NFT ecosystem. So I think something that is a little bit more prominent in the NFT space is TreasureDAO. So this is kind of like our flagship gaming platform that people know Arbitrum for. But yeah, again, I would definitely expect this to kind of grow in size down the line. We also have a ton of infrastructure players that are supporting Arbitrum. So we have the common guys like Alchemy, like Allnodes, so Chainstack. So a lot of different integrators are actually working to provide infrastructure support to all the different Arbitrum chains. And then we have many bridges as well. So on top of the native bridge that we have on our website, there are many other third-party bridges that actually bridge, where you can actually bridge funds in and out of the Arbitrum chains, right? And right now, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the control of both chains are actually governed by the Arbitrum DAO. And what do I mean by the DAO? The DAO is essentially a culmination of every single project that is building on top of Arbitrum. It's a combination of that plus all the delegates, plus all the token holders, plus all the builders, right? So as long as you're building or participating in Arbitrum, you're essentially a part of the DAO, and you can actually have a say in how the two chains are being governed, Arbitrum One and Arbitrum Nova at the moment, right? So what does that actually mean? That means that you, as a delegate or as a project or as a token holder, can raise a proposal to either get funding from the DAO treasury. You can raise a proposal to change certain network configurations. You can change parameters on core smart contracts. You can change the governance contracts as well. Obviously, like, it's not as simple as it sounds. Like, there are quite a few like intricacies and processes that you have to go through. And all in all, we want to make sure that building on top of Arbitrum is easy, but at the same time, it is resilient to a lot of these quote unquote governance attacks. So we have a thriving ecosystem, and the foundation will continue to, make sure that, both chains are kind of like governed in a constructive manner and in a safe manner, right? So here's kind of like how the foundation, which I sit out of, is related to like the wider DAO, right? So I would say that the Arbitrum DAO is responsible for making decisions, right? So people put up proposals, whether you're a community member, whether you're a delegate, whether you're a project, and then everyone can deliberate on it. And once everyone kind of says, okay, if we want to go ahead with this decision, then the foundation will kind of step in to provide operational support as and where it's needed in order to ensure that the decision is kind of acted upon and executed. So think of us as like the hands and the DAO as kind of like the brain. So you tell us, the DAO will tell us what to do. Once a vote goes through, then we will find a way to kind of like work with the proposal to operationalize the change, right? So our mission statement is essentially, to foster, develop, and authorize or govern any Arbitrum DAO-approved chains via, enabling the development of technical improvements, fostering ecosystem growth through strategic grants, and organizing educational initiatives. And we have what we call the Arbitrum Constitution, right? So this is essentially something which defines how anyone should interact and could interact with the Arbitrum DAO, right? So it's kind of like a rule that everyone has to, rule book that everyone has to kind of like adhere to and abide to when they want to interact with the Arbitrum DAO. Yeah, so on the grant side, I think this might be something that is relatable to all the builders that are thinking of building out their applications on Arbitrum. We have a Arbitrum Foundation run grants program. So essentially, it's just a program where you can put in an application, tell us what you're looking to build, tell us how much you want to request for, and then we will actually look through your application, review it, provide you some constructive feedback, and potentially give you some funds to build out your project, right? So this is live as of right now. And then ultimately, we want to issue grants towards areas where there is where increased development will potentially see proportionately greater return to the Arbitrum ecosystem. So being quite data driven, looking at the exact ROI. So ultimately, we want to grow the developer and user base and attract best-in-class infra providers, expand across industry use cases, and increase the scope of projects in the Arbitrum ecosystem. And right now, we are actually focusing on applications. So if you are building an application on top of Arbitrum One or Arbitrum Nova, feel free to kind of write into our grants program, and who knows, maybe you can get a grant to build out your product, your team, or build out a certain feature that you never had the funds to build out. So yeah, I think I wouldn't go into this, but essentially we evaluate your application through a very rigorous set of guidelines, and then we want to make sure that you provide us KPIs, milestones, just to make sure that you guys are actually accountable to the funds that you're receiving. And once you guys actually get a successful application in, once you get the funds in to your multi-sig, we will actually continue to guide you guys through and support you on building out what you want to build out. Right. So we are, again, currently accepting applications across DeFi, NFT, games, and social projects. So as long as you're building an application, feel free to write in and submit a grant application. On top of that, we also have an ambassador program. So that kind of allows you to represent Arbitrum in your local community. I believe this is actually already concluded. Like, we're not accepting new applications, sorry. But yeah, essentially we're working with a lot of different localized communities just to spread the branding and awareness of what Arbitrum is and how people can build on top of Arbitrum. So yeah, let me just skip that. Ultimately, we are actually looking to provide a lot of support and enablement for DAO proposals. So this is where I personally am very involved in. I will actually work with different teams, different projects, different delegates to understand exactly what they are looking to post on the forums, what they are looking to propose, give them some technical feasibility recommendations, recommendations on timings, who they can speak to, and then guide them through the end-to-end process. So we have a pretty standard governance process where you first have to submit your proposal on the governance forum, right? And then leave it there for, say, a week or so, let the community and the delegates kind of like give feedback, deliberate on it. And then as and when, if you think it makes sense, you can actually make changes to your proposal. And then subsequently, what we would recommend is to actually, put it up on Snapshot. So Snapshot is actually this off-chain voting platform, which allows for anyone to vote without having to pay gas fees, right? So this is a temperature check phase to see whether the DAO would actually want to support this proposal or not. So if there is like at least 50% or 51% that says yes, then it's a clear indication that there is going to be support, and that's where like you have to progress it to like an on-chain proposal, right? So what we do as well is within the foundation, we want to make sure that we help to raise awareness about every single proposal that hits the pipeline, just to ensure that everyone has eyes on it, everyone can comment on it, everyone knows what's going on, everyone can vote, right? And then once it's actually posted on chain, we will continuously remind delegates, remind people that, hey, this proposal is up for voting. Here's the TLDR of what it's like. And then if you like, you can actually go ahead and vote, right? And then once the on-chain proposal is actually passed, we would continue to support the implementation and the operationalizing of the proposed changes. So we provide essentially end-to-end support for all things governance related. So I think something that's been going around, that's been popular on crypto Twitter, is actually this thing called the STIP program. This thing essentially stands for the short-term incentive proposal, right? And let me just give you a quick TLDR. So we have a treasury of about like $3.8 billion. It's all denominated in ARC token at the moment. And there was actually a proposal by Camelot, which is a native DEX, to request for some ARC tokens from the treasury to kickstart like a campaign, like an incentive campaign. That proposal failed, and a lot of delegates actually commented that there wasn't a framework, right, to evaluate all of these like incentive campaigns. So a lot of different projects were like, what the hell, then what's the treasury sitting there for? So they actually came together via this working group. They actually coordinated governance calls. They talked about what would make sense to form this framework, and eventually they actually went to the DAO to request for $50 million to run this short-term incentive program. And then we had 105 applications to this program. 97 of them qualified, and 57 met the criteria, out of which 30 projects will actually receive funding of this 50 million ARB that's being distributed to the short-term incentive proposal. So this is kind of like a good representation of how ground up the Arbitrum DAO is. Anyone can actually have a say and progress something if they really are passionate about it. This entire initiative had no involvement from the foundation or from off-chain labs at all. But at the same time, like, we just help to advise a little bit on the operational aspect, a little bit on the compliance front as well. But when it comes to like decision making, we did not interfere or interject our stances. It moved relatively quickly, and it's just a representation of how community driven and grassroots the Arbitrum DAO is. You can see that there are many different individuals and projects that are actually posted about the short-term incentive program, right? So we have folks like Karel, who is a co-founder of Treasure. We have GMX, and then we have so many different people that are voting. So yeah, essentially it just represents like how grassroots the Arbitrum DAO is, and it gives the message that like anyone can build on top of Arbitrum, and anyone can play a part in governing how Arbitrum is, right? On top of the foundation grants programs, we also have other grants programs that are kind of like DAO led. So if you think that you are a good grant manager, how to spot teams that are quality, you can actually put up a proposal to run a grant program yourself, right? So we have two grant managers from the DAO. There are Questbook, and then there are Plurality Labs. They are actually running their own grant programs, their own grants framework, using the DAO treasury. So yeah, it's pretty exciting as well, right? So it just opens up more avenues for people to get capital to build on top of the DAO, instead of just relying entirely on the foundation grants programs. So ultimately, the DAO governance is relatively young. The DAO is relatively young, but it is finding its feet, right? You can kind of see from this slide that we've had many different people comment on how the DAO is, comment on certain proposals. It's not just like the foundation. It's not just off-chain labs saying, hey, this is going on. Hey, this is going on. We have many different community members, many different delegates, many different projects giving their stances, giving their opinions on not just the forums, but also on Twitter as well, right? And yeah, I just think that it's a sign of good things to come. It just shows like how grassroots and how community driven the DAO is from a governance standpoint, and that's what kind of excites me. I want to continue to enable people to build and to govern both the Arbitrum chains and the Arbitrum DAO as a whole. And if you are keen to kind of participate in the DAO, these are some of the cool resources that you can kind of look through. So on top of our website, feel free to look through our developer docs. If you're interested in grants, feel free to click the link here. We have a governance forum, which is super active. So this is where like all the potential proposals are actually up for a discussion. We have Tally, which is the front end for governance when it comes to an on-chain vote. And then feel free to follow us on Twitter as well, right? So we have an Arbitrum main account, and you can follow me at Clifton is here as well. So that is it for my presentation. Hopefully Nicole can kind of share this deck with the wider community so they can access these resources. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, happy to kind of like answer them. I did see some in the chat box. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Clifton, a lot for the informative session. So I will go through the list of the questions that the audience give to you already. So I will also have like some questions for myself to ask. Yeah, again, thanks again for the sharing. So
No problem at all.
yeah, the first question I find is from Ang. Hi, can I ask that how can people participate in the Arbitrum DAO? Are there any specific criteria or requirements for becoming a member of the DAO?
No criteria at all. So I'd say
Just in the
like,
token?
you don't even need to hold the token. So you just need to, be updated of what the DAO is kind of like discussing, right? So head over to our governance forums. Let me just send the link in here really quickly. Let me park the link in the chat box. So I just shared the link to our governance forum. So what you can do is kind of look through all the different discussions that delegates and projects are having at the moment. I would encourage you to, create an account and then, look through all these different topics and comment where you think you can provide a constructive comment on, and then build a reputation from there. That is essentially participating in a DAO, right? And then once you've built a good enough reputation, potentially people will delegate their tokens to you, and then you can then vote on proposals. So obviously, like if you want, you can get your own ARB tokens and then self-delegate and then vote on proposals. But I would actually much rather prefer people engage directly on the forums, give their feedback, and then build a reputation from there. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So I will ask a question from myself while waiting for other people to have more questions.
Okay.
So, Arbitrum 1 and roll-up techniques are very popular to people already. So let's talk about Arbitrum Nova and Anytrust. I heard that so Anytrust they put up some of the stories off chain, right? Instead of rolling up every data to the layer 1. So you call Arbitrum Anytrust as the next generation of application. Does it mean that Arbitrum will focus more on the Anytrust rather than the Arbitrum 1 in the future?
Not exactly. So specifically for the Arbitrum Foundation, where I sit out of, we don't have a specific area of focus when it comes to ecosystem growth. Rather, again, we are focused on enabling the development of technical improvements and feature development to make sure that Arbitrum stays low cost, high throughput. We want to foster ecosystem growth. We want to organize educational initiatives. So again, whether that lives on Arbitrum 1 or Nova, we will continue to enable and support builders, teams, and the DAO in building out the ecosystem. I won't call Anytrust as the next generation of applications because I think there shouldn't be a blanket approach to all applications, right? Say, for example, you're a DeFi protocol and you need some form of security just because like there are user funds at stake. So in those cases, maybe you would prefer to deploy your app on Arbitrum 1 if the throughput is not a big factor to you. Say, for example, you're a spot DApps, right? Where you don't get like maybe 1,000 trades per second or like 10,000 trades per second. You don't need that TPS. So ultimately it boils down to like what you're building out and what you're comfortable with, right? So building on 1 gives you more security assumptions, right? Because the call data is posted directly onto L1. Anytrust, like Nova, for example, it's more for like gaming applications where you really require a high throughput and you can afford to compromise a little bit on the trust bit. It's not exactly a compromise as well, just because like ultimately your transaction will still get posted to Ethereum. It's just that it goes through a data availability committee and there's some trust element there. But yeah, I think like there isn't a blanket approach. You really need to understand what you're trying to build out and determine like what tech stack to use from there.
Okay, so actually they serve 2 different like type of application, right?
Yes,
So one,
exactly.
yeah. So there is a trade-off whether you want throughput or gas fee optimization, or you want trustless. So I think you're right. Maybe for Nova, it will be more suitable for like application like gaming. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So here's another question from the community. How does the Arbitrum DAO ensure the transparency and accountability in its operation?
How does the Arbitrum, I'm looking at it from the chat, how does the Arbitrum DAO ensure transparency and accountability in its operation? So the DAO in itself doesn't have to like ensure transparency and accountability to itself in a way, right? Like anyone who's building on top of Arbitrum is part of the DAO, right? So I would say like, it has to be specific teams that are asking things out of the DAO that has to be accountable to them. So say, for example, this like STIP program, this short-term incentive program, right? Like, if you want to apply to the program, you need to make sure that like you list out what you are using the grant amount for, what milestones you have, what KPIs are you tracking, right? How often are you tracking them? How are you gonna incentivize people to actually, use your application with the funds that we are giving, that the DAO is actually giving you? So there is actually a working group and a team that's organizing the entire short-term incentive program that is going to be really grilling all of these applications for updates and making sure that they're being transparent and accountable to the wider DAO. And that is something that I actually do see more and more working groups having, right? So having just this like enforcer per se, just saying, hey, tell the DAO what you're doing, tell us exactly which stage of the project you're at, what milestone you're at, where are you at in terms of your KPIs, and then from there, hopefully there is a lot more transparency and accountability. But when you talk about like how does the Arbitrum DAO as a whole enforce transparency, I think you gotta go like use case specific. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, hopefully. So another question is, what kind of projects or initiative is the Arbitrum DAO is like currently supporting or planning to support? I think this one has been mentioned briefly in the slide already.
Yeah, so as long as you're an application, we're happy to kind of like, look through what you're building out and support you, right? So as long as you're building an application either on One or Nova, we're happy to kind of like speak to you to see how we can help you kind of grow and scale, whether it's through grants, whether it's just through like general introductions to other teams, just so that they can provide their advice as well, or to delegates. We're happy to support as long as you're, building on top of Arbitrum. Doesn't have to be like DeFi specific or NFT specific or gaming specific. As long as you're building an Arbitrum, we're happy to support you.
Okay. And here's another question from myself. So I heard you shared about Stylus. So it seems to be like very good in terms of speed and also resources efficiency, and it will unlock a lot of things that cannot be done before in EVM, right? But is there any trade-off, and how about the roadmap for it to become available in mainnet?
Yeah, so before I go into that, I do want to point out that Stylus currently is in alpha, which means that there are a lot of planned improvements on the roadmap. So these are kind of like the high-level next steps for Stylus, right? So we need to make sure that there is a comprehensive audit of the source code to ensure the safety of contracts as well as the Stylus SDK, right? We need to enable Stylus for Orbit chains, which are the L3s I was talking about. So L3s that are deployed right now can be upgraded permissionlessly to support Stylus. And then because the DAO kind of controls both Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova, the two chains, there needs to be a proposal submitted to activate Stylus on first testnets like Goerli to see whether there are any compatibility issues, and then eventually both mainnets. So you have to go through like the DAO governance process to upgrade both Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova to be compatible with Stylus. When it comes to trade-offs, I think it's a little bit more downstream, right? Because we are actually looking to actively target like new developers or Web2 developers, but they aren't familiar with Web3 deployments, and they might not be able to factor in best practices when it comes to security and say like custody of funds, which could potentially put users who interact with the smart contracts at risk. That's it. There are many educational resources available, and the foundation will actually be actively pushing out content as well to help up-level these developers on these best practices. And specifically, I wanted to point out that reentrancy is actually a common vulnerability that developers can only attempt to mitigate in solidity, which is what is supported right now. But with Stylus, there is actually cheap, very, very cheap reentrancy detection. And with the Rust SDK, reentrancy is actually disabled by default, unless you as a developer intentionally overrides it. So in some sense, like Stylus can be a little bit safer, but ultimately we need to do a lot more audits, and we need the DAO to kind of decide whether they want to upgrade the chains to support Stylus.
I see. Interesting. So by default, it's visible if you program in Rust language, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Is there any other programming languages other than Rust and C and C++ that Stylus supports, like TypeScript, for example, or any other languages that can compile down to WebAssembly, right?
For now, it's just these three. Yeah, it's just these three for a start.
Okay, got it. Let me ask another question from the audience.
Okay.
So can token holders to delegate their voting power or to multiply delegates simultaneously? And how does this work?
So it's a little difficult right now. You can't do it directly on the governance UI, meaning to say that if you have 1,000 ARB tokens and you choose one delegate, you can only choose to delegate all 1,000 of your tokens to them. It's either 0 or 1,000. It's binary, right? But there are many ways to kind of go about that. You could essentially kind of split your holdings. It's a little bit of a hack, right? Like you could create like another wallet and then split your holdings and then delegate to say like 2 delegates, or if you want, create 5 wallets and then split your holdings and delegate to 5 delegates. I am actually actively speaking with governance tooling platforms to explore partial delegation. I think this is something that is very widely requested amongst especially the larger token holders. So yeah, keep a lookout for that happening down the line.
Okay, so so about how do that delegates ensure that they act in the best interest of the token holder that they represent?
It's a tricky topic just because we don't have an enforcement mechanism right now for delegates, accountability mechanism. Just my personal take, right? Again, not representative of the foundation, but I think maybe what would make sense is for there to be a rewards program for delegates, right? So for example, if you are participative, if you posted this number of times in the forums, and if your post is actually quality, you actually voted on 60%, 70%, 80%, whatnot of all proposals. Basically, if you're active, then you should be rewarded for your work, right? So in that sense, people actually hold you accountable. And if you're not active, but you're getting money, people will be like, hey, what the hell? How are you getting money when you're not doing any work? Maybe I should redelegate my token somewhere else. So I think that is kind of maybe a good first step to explore. Again, it's up to the DAO on whether they want to explore that. I wouldn't push that on my end. But I think it's pretty interesting to see how that could work. Personal show, I actually did write a Medium article on this. So let me just send it in the chat. I'm just shamelessly shilling right now. But yeah, it's I'm a pretty big governance geek. So yeah, I talk about I explore different governance models. I actually think a lot about how can we actually enforce accountability and transparency amongst delegates. So yeah, feel free to kind of check that out. And if you have any governance questions in particular, feel free to DM me directly. Always happy to chat about governance topics.
Yeah. And I think it's not easy to have a good reputation among all the DAO. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Another question from about the STIP. The STIP is a really hot topic right now among crypto community, but I wonder what are the expected outcome of the STIP for both whitelisted projects and active users?
It's very straightforward. We just want to bring in more users to all these different applications, right? Through these incentives. So just want to make it explicitly clear that the foundation is not part of the STIP program. We don't organize it. There's an entirely different working group. But the whole objective is to make sure that all these different applications can actually continuously attract more and more users to use their own applications through distributing ARB as an incentive for people to use their apps. So EVL, I'd say like number of unique addresses, number of active addresses, all those are kind of like key metrics that I think the working group is actively tracking to evaluate whether the STIP is actually effective or not.
Okay. Since there are a lot of developers in this call, so I will ask some of the technical questions for myself again.
Sure.
So, how are DAC parties chosen? Is it up to the Arbitrum Foundation, or is there any process for that?
Yeah, so for a start, the DAC members, DAC meaning the Data Availability Committee, they are actually selected by like Off-Chain Labs and the Arbitrum Foundation. Again, it's a managed makeup of like established Web 2 and Web 3 players, but now governance and the DAO actually has the ability to remove or add members to the community. There are no, if you want to be a part of the community, you can actually write in to the DAO via the forums. But I want to say that, there are actually like no explicit benefits to being a DAC member at the moment. It's not like, if you're a part of it, you get paid like $5,000 a month. There are no explicit incentives. However, I think, it actually might be important, again, personal take, for the DAO to, explore how service providers or entities or individuals running public infrastructure, like being a part of the DAC or running validator nodes, can actually be rewarded and incentivized to sustainably continue with these services, because we need to ensure that these operations are widely distributed and decentralized in some aspects, so that we don't, remain too reliant, or we don't become too centralized on any single entity.
I see. And also, again, you mentioned about you want to decentralize the sequencer that you have right now, only one. So how's that going?
So it's not us, it's actually Off-Chain Labs that are partnering with like Espresso Systems to explore how the sequencer can be decentralized. So let me just send that article forward here, 1 second. Here. So I just sent the link to the article in the chat. Essentially, Off-Chain Labs, they are partnering with Espresso to explore how shared sequencing technology can be brought to all Ethereum rollups, not just Arbitrum, right? Ultimately, if you decentralize sequencer, you significantly bring down the risks of like potentially MEV attacks, negative MEV. You can improve safety, security, and general user experience. So things like transaction ordering policies or time boost, it essentially are different ways for decentralized sequencing options to explore. So yeah, I think this is still relatively new. I don't really have a lot to kind of comment on, but feel free to kind of like follow Off-Chain Labs Twitter or Medium account to see what updates they have on that front.
I see. So one more question from the audience from Tao. What are the special potential benefits of participating in the Arbitrum DAO for its member or token holders? I think this question is quite general.
There is no special potential benefit. I'd say like, being able to really play a part in governing the chains is something that is new, not just for Arbitrum, but for the whole of Web3, right? Like DAOs are like a new paradigm when it comes to global forms of coordination. So if you are able to kind of like be a part of that, experience that, lead a proposal end to end, I think like there are a ton of learnings. There are many brilliant minds in Arbitrum land as well. So getting to speak with many different delegates, many different teams, it's definitely going to be an experience, a learning experience that you can't possibly have in, say, like a traditional role, traditional companies, organizations. So yeah, I think like those are kind of like the outright benefits. Yeah, when it comes to like, token or whatnot, there are no like explicit benefits on that.
Okay, so back to my question. So currently, Arbitrum Orbit offer developers to build their own like kind of layer 3, right? And those layer 3 will like like put data on top of layer 2, like Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for these layer 3 to directly becoming layer 2, like putting data to layer 1?
No, so Orbit chains are essentially still L3s that settle on Arbitrum 1 or Nova. If you want to build out your own layer 2 using the Arbitrum tech stack, similar to like what Optimism has with their OP stack, right? You would have to actually request an L2 license from either the Arbitrum Foundation or from Off-Chain Labs, or the DAO can actually grant you the license as well. So you can essentially go into the governance forums and then say that, hey, we are this builder. We are looking to leverage the Arbitrum tech stack to launch our own layer 2. So recently we've had Frame, which is an NFT development platform and chain that actually launched their L2 with the Arbitrum stack. But there are actually discussions right now in the forums on how the DAO can kind of open source that. So it's thinking about how the benefits that can bring to the wider Arbitrum ecosystem. So excited to see how that kind of develops as well.
I see. So actually, there might be possible, right? But we need to go to hold a whole process for the licensing.
For now, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Got it. It's quite different compared to other approaches from the Optimism, for example, with the Bedrock recently. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think we are running to almost the end of the session. So I will just pick a few more questions and then hand it back over to Nicole.
Okay.
Yeah. So he asked, I read some about the delegation of the Arbitrum DAO. So are there any limitation or condition associated with revoking a delegation and reclaiming voting power?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Like he asked about the condition to revoking a delegation.
Yeah, so delegation is permissionless, right? So you can just go on like Tally, or if you're savvy enough, go directly to like the smart contracts, the governance contracts. Just put in like the new address that you want to delegate to, hit delegate, and then essentially your delegation to the previous delegate is revoked and transferred to like the new delegate. There are no like special like permissions or features for that. It's entirely permissionless. And you can delegate to yourself as well. Which is what you have to do if you want to like vote on proposals using your own tokens.
Okay, got it. And I have one last question. How about the interoperable between Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova, and also between different layer 2 and layer 3 in the whole like kind of Arbitrum different chains like that?
Yeah, so essentially Arbitrum 1 and Nova are separate chains at the moment, right? So in a way, like if you're a user, you can't actually use an Arbitrum Nova chain. If you're an Arbitrum 1, you have to change your RPC, right? But that said, it'd be interesting to see whether there are any teams that can kind of scope and build up maybe native cross-chain messaging, which kind of allows users on one chain to access apps on the other chain in a trustless manner. We definitely encourage teams to explore and contribute to the core Nitro stack.
I see. All right. Yeah, interesting. I think that's definitely something that we need to work on, and might be have a very good grant from the foundation, from the DAO. Yeah,
for sure. Either the foundation or the DAO is fine.
All right. Hopefully, the people here have gained a lot of knowledge based on your sharing. So I'm handing back to Nicole.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for staying through for our AMA, and again, thanks Clinton for a very informative sharing. I hope everyone has got very excited about participating. Like if you are not in the DAO just yet, or like about building on Arbitrum as well. So we look forward to having more. I think more builders coming out here who is like looking at Arbitrum, and of course like getting inspired after the session. So hopefully we can have you and the Arbitrum team back as well for the next sessions, when we can dig deeper into the technology, I think the innovation around Arbitrum as well. Any last word for the community before we wrap up the AMA?
Yeah, definitely. Very happy to continue to share updates on Arbitrum's front, and definitely looking forward to more teams in Vietnam or in wider APAC to build on top of Arbitrum. I just sent out Twitter profiles for myself as well as for the Arbitrum main account. Would encourage you guys to kind of join and follow either myself or the main Arbitrum account for updates. And if you need to reach me, feel free to reach out to Nicole, and then she can bridge the conversation from there on out. Very, very happy to speak to the community again. Thanks, Folk, for going through the AMA. Thanks, Nicole, for having me on, and thanks everyone for chiming for dialing in post dinner time.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Anh-Phúc, as well for co-hosting the session, and we hope to have you back virtually or physically, Clifton, in Vietnam or Southeast Asia as well for the next events or AMAs. Again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great day or have a great evening, and we'll see you at the next AMAs. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.